to the KJ Methods YouTube channel. What I've decided to do today is another test. When I look at the amount of views that I get on YouTube, it seems to be that you guys are really interested in taking tests and honing those test-taking skills. So before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to all who are trying to get their real estate license. Let's get started. We are going to take an agency test. Question number 1. You go on a listing presentation and the homeowner tells you that he is in financial trouble and just needs to sell this property quickly. Can you take the listing? Let's look at the answers. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to take a look at the answers and see if you can pick out the right one. Well, of course you can take the listing. You can take the listing for any price that the seller wishes, as long as you don't reveal that this seller is in financial trouble. Don't forget, with agency, you have a loyalty component to it, and so you want to make sure that you do not reveal that they're in financial trouble. But of course you can take the listing. No problem there. Question number 2. Your broker authorizes you to sign contracts on his or her behalf. How is this authorization given to you? Let's take a look at the answers. I'm going to give you an opportunity to look at them. Okay, so you should have known here that the authorization that comes from your broker is given to you in your affiliation or employment agreement with the broker. That is your agency. And so in that agreement, the scope of your authority is going to be contained in that agreement. What you can do, what you can't do, how are you going to be compensated? Are you going to be an independent contractor or an employee? It will all be contained right in that agreement. Question number 3. Your sister asks you to help her sell her home. Which would be an act that might be illegal? All right, this one should be immediately clear to you. She tells you that your commission will be anything over her loan payoff of $59,750. No, we can't do that. That is called a net listing, and it is not allowed. We can make a net listing legal by placing the appropriate numbers on it. You would put your commission on it, but we cannot leave it open-ended, essentially saying, hey, you could take any commission that you want. That is going to be illegal. Question number 4. Your sister is a licensee and is working for ABC Realty Partners. You are a licensee with the same company. Okay. Your sister has a customer that puts an offer on a house that is listed by you. Now, first of all, I want you to say, when I have an agency question and it's kind of convoluted like that, just draw yourself a little diagram so that you know exactly what's going on. So what we want to know is, your sister would be. Your sister would be an agent representing the seller. You may say, well, how is that possible? How is that possible? Well, your sister works for the same brokerage that you work for, right? So you guys both work for ABC Realty Partners. But your sister has a customer or third party, depending upon what state you're in. We call it customer or third party, which is that person that we do not represent, right? The one that we just work with. All right, your sister has the customer or the third party. However, your agency is working with the seller, and that seller is a client of the agency. We call them clients or principals depending upon what state you're in. The point being, since your sister just is working with a customer, we do not represent customer or third parties. We don't represent them, we just work with them. So your sister must represent the same person that her broker represents. Who does her broker represent? Her broker represents the seller. So then, of course, you represent the seller. All right. Number 5 is a Catholic who lists her house with you and refuses to sell her house to a Frenchman because he doesn't speak English in violation of any law. All right, so you have this person who's Catholic, Frenchman comes, doesn't speak English. Is she in violation of any law? So take a look at that. Okay, I think that you know pretty quickly that she would be in violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act, Federal Fair Housing Law. Keep in mind, though, that there may be certain exceptions, right? If in this situation she was a single family homeowner, you guys remember those exceptions, right? All we're saying is that there's these protected categories of federal fair housing, but there are times that you could discriminate, right? If you fall into one of the exceptions. We don't know if that is here. They're not even bringing that up as the question. And so we're just saying, yes, she is in violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act. Actually, I want to look at A, because A is going to the exception. It's going to the exception, right? And it says as long as she's an owner occupant and she doesn't use any discriminatory advertising. That would be true. So if you pick that answer, that would be true, except you're missing one more element. You also cannot use a broker. All right? And so you needed it to say that in order for you to pick A. Otherwise, it is C. Question number 6, you have an investor seller who wants you to list his property, which needs many repairs. He tells you he's upside down in the property and therefore wants you to list the property for sale as is. Should you list it? All right, let's take a look. So, of course, you can list the property, but this is getting at to make sure you understand if you use the words as is, that's fine. But you still must always disclose the defects to the buyer. All right, defects that they can't find out, typically latent defects, but the defects to the buyer that they can't find out. So you can use the terminology as is, but understand you can't use the terminology as is to get around your responsibility to disclose when you're supposed to disclose. Question number 7. Broker Williamson has listed your neighbor's house. Your neighbor has accepted an offer and is now under contract with a projected closing date in 2 weeks. You wish to place a higher offer on your neighbor's home. The listing agent, what should the listing agent do in that particular situation? It says that they are now under contract. And so what should they do if another offer comes in? That's the question. Well, they should give the offer to the seller and say, hey, we got another offer, but we can hold it as a backup offer. All right. You never tell a seller to break a contract or anything of that nature, but you always present that offer anyway. All right. And you let the seller know what is going on. Don't forget, you are required under Poland, the notice requirement to your principal to let them know what's going on. Question number 8, Sally has agreed to purchase a home, has done all of the inspections, and is out of due diligence. Unfortunately, she didn't get the job transfer she was promised. She wants to cancel the contract. As her agent, what advice would you give her? Sally may want to talk to an attorney. That's essentially it, right? It is not in your position to give her advice relating to this. This is a legal matter, but what you can give her is a phone number to an attorney and say, you probably should check and see what is the best course of action for you. Number 9, Mary signed a 4-month listing agreement, but after 42 days, she decides she no longer wants to sell her property, and she informs the listing broker of her decision. When does the contract terminate? When does the contract terminate? The contract terminates on the day she gives notice to the broker that she wants to terminate. It's terminated at that point in time. But the key that you want to remember is it doesn't mean that Mary doesn't still owe the broker something. That really depends on where we are in the contract, whether the broker put out funds for the contract, right? But the point that you want to understand is that when they say you're fired, you're fired. That doesn't mean that you won't have a financial obligation. Mary may owe some money as a result, but the termination of the agency happens when Mary gives notice. Question number 10, you receive an earnest money check on Monday at noon. When should the check be deposited with your broker? This one should be pretty easy for you, unless all parties have agreed otherwise, as soon as possible. This is one of those questions, right, where you got to make sure you read all the answers. Make sure you read all of the answers, because normally they say Monday at noon. It may have said, hey, you got to take it in by Monday. But don't forget that your broker is going to really let you know when it has to be taken into the office. But this one says here, hey, unless you have agreed otherwise, you need to treat that like it's a hot potato and take it into that office as soon as practicable. Number 11, you're showing a property listed with another broker. The seller confides in you that her agent is doing a poor job and she wants to fire her. What should you tell the seller? Basically, nothing. Right? You need to talk to them, right? I don't have an opinion on it. Understand that you cannot get involved in that agency relationship, all right? So essentially, you're going to be hands off relating to it. You're not going to give advice. You're not even going to listen long, right? You're basically going to say, this is not something I feel comfortable talking about, and then just go ahead and, direct them to speak to the people who are involved. Question number 12, in what situation might it be acceptable for the agent to create a very detailed and complicated sales contract? Never, right? Never. Remember that we just fill in contract forms. So anytime you get draft a form, create a form, right? Detailed and complicated, we stay away from it, all right? All we are doing is filling out forms that are created by attorneys. And so the answer would be never. You should never get involved in doing that. Question number 13, which of the following would best describe a listing agreement? This one you should know right off the top of your head. It's the employment agreement between the property owner and the listing broker. Question number 14, a broker lists a home for a seller and finds a ready, willing, and able buyer during the original listing period. At closing, the seller refused to pay the broker the commission because the seller states that he found the buyer. The broker sued for the commission and won, even though it was determined that the seller found the ready, willing, and able buyer. So what kind of listing did this broker most likely have with the seller? Okay, this one you should know is C, exclusive right to sell. How do I know that? Because if you know what an exclusive right to sell is, you know that it doesn't matter who sells the property if the property is sold within the listing period. And so here the property is sold. The broker can't prove, right, that he was the one. He doesn't have to prove that he was the one. The only thing that he has to prove is that it was sold during the listing period, because he's going to get paid no matter what. Question 15, you're doing an open house on your listing. One of the people looking at the house is interested in making an offer. To avoid dual agency, what should you do? All right, treat the buyer as a third party or a customer. It's pretty simple, right? Treat them as a third party customer, not an agency. Can you work with a customer? Sure. So they come in, and you don't want to have dual agency. So what are you not going to do? You're not going to establish an agency with them. You're going to just treat them like a third party customer, and then you'll be able to work with them on that house where you're representing the seller. All right, how did you do on that one? So that is it for today. Hopefully that was helpful to you. It's really important that you get your vocab down and then learn how to take these questions. And it's that simple with passing your real estate exam. Well, thanks for coming by the KJ Method YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, and share this video for all who may be interested in taking and passing that real estate exam. See you next time.